Hi, I'm Lynne Walters. I teach in the College of Education at Texas A&M University, and my partner is Martha Green, and Martha works in the public partnerships and outreach, mostly to K through 12 teachers at Texas A&M as well. If I've learned anything from this workshop, it's how broad the definition of digital storytelling is, because I kept on sitting there and saying, this is not what I think of as digital stories, but we use the concept that comes from the Story Center out in Berkeley, California, which is a digital story is a 3 to 5 minute video based on a memorable personal experience where the individual writes a script, generally 250 to 500 words, then records the script and chooses visuals, either goes out and shoots pictures themselves, gets old family pictures, has artifacts that they digitize, or uses clip art or something off the web. And to illustrate the script, then uses iMovie or WeVideo or some other Windows Movie Maker, some other movie making platform to develop their video, and then lays down their script, lays down their track, and then can add sound, like sound effects, or it can add music. So it's a little video, I guess, a little YouTube. That's how I describe it to my students, is if you're going to make a little YouTube video based on a memorable personal experience. So that's how we define digital stories. But what we're going to talk about today is using that kind of movie format to help students document their research. And this concept started when Martha ran a workshop out of public partnerships and outreach for middle schoolers. And the middle schoolers were focusing on sustainability, global sustainability issues. And in order to participate in this contest and this workshop, they had to write a paper, a research paper, and also create a digital story based on the same topic. And what we did then was, as publish or perish types, we decided to look at the difference between the two to see if changing a paper into a video format changed the student's perception of the process and also changed the product. And what we found was that the digitals were much more reflective, they were much more insightful, they were much more meaningful to the students, and they were much more meaningful to the audience. The audience could more clearly understand global sustainability issues and the connection between the global and the local, as well as the students. So we figured that if the middle schoolers, if 5th and 6th graders could do this, maybe their teachers could do that also. And so I teach a course called Educator as Researcher, and it's a graduate course in the College of Education. And most of my students are in-service teachers. They're already teaching and they're working on a master's degree. And this course is basically the way I teach in an action research course. And action research is also called participant research, or as we call it in education, classroom-based research. The goal of action research is not just to find out something, which you do in academic research, but find out something that's going to improve your own practice. A problem that you've isolated in your classroom or in your school that you want to study scientifically so that you can make your own practice better, so that you can solve this problem that you've isolated. And I've taught this course for several semesters, and I've had a wonderful range of let's see. I've had a wonderful range of projects in my course, which range all the way from one student wanted to know whether if she dressed up in class, dressed down, or dressed in business casual, the classroom would behave better. She'd always wondered about the impact of the teacher's attire on student behavior. I had another student who looked at, you know, those little stations you have in grade school where you move from one section to the other and study different problems in math. Well, she implemented them in a social studies classroom for high schoolers and wanted to see if that worked. Another student who taught computer science wanted to know if teaching coding in a 5th grade classroom could help students understand math better. All of this, it uses a scientific method, and the papers they created were very typical, you know, abstract, introduction, lit review, methodology, the whole ball of wax that we've been writing ever since we were undergraduates. But the idea was, and after about 3 semesters I got really tired of reading these papers too, was what would happen if they turned their research paper into a video. They told the story of their research. The idea behind this also came from a project that's done in Scotland, in Glasgow, where they actually have a competition where researchers make digital stories about their own research, what propelled them to do their research, what their research is doing for them, and what it is doing for the community. And it's good PR for the university to show how important they are in the larger community, but it's also a good way for researchers to understand their research when it loses that human dimension, when you're so deep into it that you just feel like you're running the numbers. If you look back at what got you into this area, you're studying arthritis because your grandfather had arthritis, and it's a wonderful video that starts out with a picture of her grandfather's gnarled hands. And it makes that research come alive and be more valuable to the researcher, to the community, and to the institution as well. So we had the students in the class, and these were 20 graduate students, and it was an online course, and they all are or were planning to be teachers or administrators in schools. So I had them make a 10 to 15 page paper based on their research, but also a digital story of the project, and it had to be a movie. There's no, you know, PowerPoints or Prezis or Camtasias. It had to be a movie, and they used iMovie or most of them did use iMovie, because you can do that on your iPad, you can do it on your iPhone, or you can do it on your computer. We also they could use Windows Movie Maker, WeVideo, any platform they could find that would work successfully for them. And the idea was for them to explain their research, explain the steps in their research, write the script, speak the script, pick the pictures. If they wanted to use sound, they could use sound. If they wanted to use sound effects, if they wanted to use video from the actual research project as it was going on, it was fine. But the idea was to kind of expand their understanding of their own research and look at it in a different way. And action research is this. This is practitioner research, or it's classroom-based research, and it applies a scientific method to real-world problems with the goal of improving your own practice. Okay, so I also asked them some questions when they were done about how they felt about making their digital story, and Martha's going to tell you about the themes that came from that, the answers to those questions. And what we found, and we coded those qualitatively, and what we found basically, strangely enough, was that they were paralyzed by the technology, some of them, even though it's, there's a big push for teachers to bring technology into the classroom. But they also said that turning their research into digital stories or digital documentaries helped them not only to understand their own project, but when they saw their classmates' projects, helped them to understand those. And they felt that this was a way of creating research that really came alive, not only to them, but to anybody who watched. And so, if this all works, this is one of
inviting them to create a video of themselves recording that they could share with friends would provide motivation for them to sustain engagement with books. This led to my research question: what influence will self-video recording have on behavioral reading engagement of struggling students? What influence will self-video recording reading have on sustained independent reading? And what influence will self-video recording reading have on reading achievement? Before we go any further, let's define a few terms that will be used in this video. First, behavioral reading engagement. I based my definition of behavioral reading engagement on the research of Unruh and Quirk, who defined it as any observable reading behaviors. Specifically, I looked for active reading, silently or aloud, finger tapping, briefly studying pictures in picture-supported texts, asking a teacher about an unknown word, or asking for a new book, having completed the one that they already had. Self-recording is defined as students using an iPad to record themselves while reading aloud. Audio quality was emphasized over visual quality so that students wouldn't feel the need to adjust or worry about the positioning of their iPad camera. DEAR stands for Drop Everything and Read, and is the term that my school uses for independent reading time. During DEAR, students are expected to be reading independently, and teachers are actively conferring with students, listening to them read, asking them questions to assess comprehension, and providing feedback or coaching to help them apply reading strategies. In order to discover the influence that self-recording could have on students' reading engagement and achievement, I documented the reading level and behavioral reading engagement of students before and after they were given an iPad to record their oral reading. I collected behavioral engagement data during DEAR sessions that were at least 30 minutes long in order to allow myself to split my time fairly between observing the students in the study and the rest of the students in my class. I recorded engagement at 5-minute intervals. I also measured the reading level of each student using benchmark passages from reading A to Z. Let's listen to some of the recordings that my students made.
We are in it. The mystery of life and someone is looking at us. Someone is looking at us. Who is looking at us? A monster? No, it is a reader. A reader is reading us. How is a reader reading us? That reader is reading these words. We are in a book. We are in a book. We are being read. Reading read.
The results of this study were limited, but did show some benefit to this intervention. I had planned to study the intervention with 4 students. However, one was absent during the pre-intervention data collection phase, and one was absent during much of the post-intervention data collection phase. As a result, my data reflects only the experience of 2 students. Here you can see the data collection for one day of deer. At the end of each deer session, each student was given an engagement score. Engagement scores were used to compare pre-intervention engagement with post-intervention engagement. Engagement scores were derived by dividing the number of times a student was observed to be engaged during a particular deer time by the number of observations made during that same deer time. For example, here you can see on March 22nd, student OM was observed to be engaged 3 out of the 6 total observation time.
So I think we're going to stop the video to look at the impact. As Lynn pointed out, what we wanted to know was what was the impact on student learning when you move information from a text-based format to a digital environment. What is the impact on teachers' perspectives and their level of understanding of the research and the issues? So quickly run through the themes. Many of them responded that they had trouble with technology, but in that same paragraph, they said they were really happy to have been put into a position where they had the opportunity to learn. Many of them said, I've used PowerPoint over and over again, but I've never had the opportunity to use iMovie. They indicated that they understood their research in a new way. We link this to Bakhteen's idea that when you couple information from multiple sources and combine that, you form a new understanding of the material. They pointed out that they could focus more clearly on points about the research. They indicated that it caused them to reflect on their research. I understand other people's research in a new way. Many people are visual learners, they pointed out, and with the visual of the video, other people in the class were more able to understand. I love the students' comment, it was like watching a movie trailer before watching the movie. The digital story made the connection between research and the classroom. I think for the first time, many of these people saw the benefit of action research, and they also understood that this kind of action research, when published, gives a lot of power to a teacher's voice. I can more easily share my research. A 3 to 5 minute video allows the viewer to get a quick feel for the research backed up by fancy pictures and abbreviations. I have a new tool for my practice. These are primarily teachers who are in service, so many of them were really glad to increase their understanding of technology, and not only in their classroom, but also to be able to present research in this format. I think they all felt that putting in a digital format made their research come alive in a real new way and gave a powerful voice to classroom teachers who are just beginning to feel the power of what research could do. And also it made them much less intimidated by the idea of research. So transforming the action research method into a digital story turns reflection into learning by encouraging all participants to go beyond the written information into the 21st century visual format, creating meaning of an issue involved with education and teacher development. So I think we'll leave it at that, and we'll have time for a few questions.
A minute or so for questions. Well, 5.
Thank you. Okay, any questions?
We were really
Okay.
short.
So I'm just curious if any of your teachers ventured sort of beyond iMovie, because this is sort of skills with a voiceover, and I wonder if any of the students really tried to do it. I say that with all honesty. When I first started doing this work, it was my son who did all this. And you know, it was very fancy, and I didn't understand it. So I'm wondering if,
I think most of them used iMovie because they can do it on their iPads, and the university issues them all an iPad to use. Anybody who can do it on their iPhone has way better eyes than I do. But most of them, I think, use the iPad, so they used iMovie. But we encourage them to use other formats, just not PowerPoint. We want you to be active in this, and we want you to record your own voice. And I was particularly impressed by the video that we showed, because she actually took photographs of students. She actually recorded students. I apologize, the voice is a little low, but she did the best she could. She was operating in her own classroom, but she was experimenting with technology, and so she learned in the process of doing her research. Yes?
By making these videos, they actually had another form of research allowed to themselves in terms of having these photographs and other materials. Did any of the students note that or reflect on that in their research?
I think they saw the power of it. These are second year.
Probably. This is probably the last class they take in their master's program, because they leave the research to the very end, because they're so afraid of the concept. So they're pretty much at the end of their master's degree.
But I think it shows them that they could take this research and publish it. I think many of them are very intimidated. Are we all going through graduate school, read lots and lots of research papers? But when you can put the research into this kind of format, it's much more alive. It's easier to explain to other people. It's easier for an audience to interpret. And I think it shows the possible power of a classroom teacher's voice. I mean, after all, classroom teachers are right there in the field experiencing these things. And who writes about it? People in colleges of education do the writing. So this gives the classroom teacher a vehicle for doing research and publication. And maybe just experiencing the power of their own voice, which I think is very, very important, especially for women. So I encourage you to use digital storytelling in your classroom. It's really fun. We didn't see very many digital stories in the process of this workshop. If anyone wants to instructions about how to do this in the classroom, please email me. I've taught many, many workshops over the years in digital storytelling, both for pre-service teachers and in-service teachers. And we have narrowed this down to a one-page set of instructions, because we figured they would read that. And they've never complained about it, which is just amazing to me. And many, many of them have created wonderful digital stories, either as Lynne does several other things with it.
I use it in my foundations, Cultural Foundations of Education class, to have them do a cultural autobiography, which they're coming in tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. Because when I had them do a paper, we went to Grandma's house over Christmas and we ate the cookies, and now I get something that's much deeper and more reflective, kind of understanding what the whole experience of family meant to them and how it changed the people that they are. And I use it as much as possible, because I think it's just a good way to present things on a new platform that helps not only teachers understand technology, but also understand themselves.
So we've also published on using digital storytelling to teach mathematics in middle school. So there are a lot of ways you can use it creatively. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.